So there's this game, Nier Automata, and I don't know what to think. I hear more about it and I am more intrigued. The people who don't think games are real art think this game is art. The people who do think games are art think this game is the most beautiful, rich, complex thing they've ever seen. I don't know. This is what I get when I Google Nier. But there must be more to this game, otherwise art critics wouldn't be staring into it like it's the abyss and it's starting to stare back into them. Nier is a series, but it's a spin-off of a pre-existing series, so there's like a whole bunch of games I'd have to play to get the full context. And what am I, made of money? Am I Mr. Dollaroo? I don't have enough to pay my rent even before I gave it all to private investigators to bring me pictures of Adam Driver at the gym. But Nier Automata doesn't rely that heavily on that context, at least in part because it's the magnum opus of the series. Magnum opus, which loosely translates from Latin as big work, is the greatest achievement of someone's career, the peak of everything they've done. So who is the they for which this is their greatest achievement? Of course, it's Yoko Taro, Japanese game developer, famous auteur within the industry, and bobblehead, child man, goblin goon. What the fuck? Okay, but wait, there's this idea that media with an anime aesthetic is somehow less political than Western media, that it's just a bunch of weird fun with no meaning, or that with all the hypersexualized characters you often get, that it's just there to pander to the fanboy boners, and it's kind of devoid of all artistic merit. And I have to not give in to that idea. I have to not give in to that prejudice that just because anime is cursed as hell, that all media with an anime aesthetic is also cursed as hell. I have to not give in to that idea. Okay, we're going to talk about the game now, but I have a script in progress, and I'm coming back for you, anime. You won't get away with this, anime. You will see your reckoning. How do I talk about this game? Okay. 10,000 years in the future, android people, the Yorha, are stuck in a total deadlock in their unending proxy war with the machines. The machines are kind of cute little rusty bobblehead things. I call it a proxy war because the humans created the androids and the machines were created by some sort of alien beings long in the past. The machines, only initially vaguely humanoid and totally robotic, are starting to act more and more human, displaying cognition and forming societies, while the androids, initially created in the image of humanity, have kind of turned into space fascists. There's an army of lady androids reporting back to a white-robed pure commander. It's like the Dark Souls of Steven Universe? The story centers around you as 2B, a Yorha military unit, and Sexy Ninja Maid, and 9S, a scouter unit, and Hacker Boy, designed to look like a young boy of maybe 13 or 14. 2B and 9S explore the ruined planet Earth, fighting various sizes and styles of machines, including sexy shirtless anime men, so hey, at least the objectification is being shared around. Although the sexy anime men look like androids, which is to say they look like humans, 2B and 9S are instantly sure about calling them machines. They were, after all, hatched out of a bizarre machine orgy.
Child. Together forever. Together forever. This cannot continue. This cannot continue. This cannot continue.
An android?
No! This is a machine!
They discover there's a town of pacifist machines that want no part of the war. They also come across A2, a much older Yoha android, on the run from the Yoha. Adam, that's one of the sexy machine men, Adam and Eve, kidnaps 9S, and then 2B catches up with him and kills Adam. But then 2B and 9S have to fight the grief-stricken Eve, who they defeat, in the process infecting 9S with a logic virus that affects the machines. But since 9S hacked into Eve, it's infected him too. To escape the virus, 9S is able to hack and transfer his consciousness into a machine body, proving that perhaps machines and androids aren't as different as Yoha wanted them to believe.
But that's not even the whole game. Like, once you finish, the game prompts you to go back and play it again, only this time you play it as 9S, and once you've played it again, you reach a new part of the story where all the Yoha get infected and the base blows up and 2B and 9S escape, but 2B gets infected too and A2 has to kill her, and then it's a new story and it's all about 9S and A2, and only then does the real title card appear? Like, only now at 2 playthroughs and a bit are you playing the actual game? And then there are all the philosophers. The game references philosophers by having characters named after them. This fucking thing has too many moving parts. How do I even begin to write about something like this? I want to talk about a simpler game. I don't know how to... Yoshi's Crafted World is a beautiful, joyous, and just wholesome game. In it, you play as Yoshi, everyone's soft friend, but this time he's even softer because he's made of felt. The world is charmingly constructed out of arts and crafts pieces. Every character, building, and scene comprising recognizable elements such as bottle caps, colored paper, or emptied ramen noodle pots.
The thing about the level design, I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. Everything's just so cute. Look at him. Oh.
Together, the fact that all the world is made of this beautiful trash and that every level is so intricately designed leaves me constantly aware of the people who made the game. I can't not think about the people who designed this world when everything in it screams, I was made by someone! Even though, ironically, the arts and crafts pieces of Yoshi's Crafted World weren't physically made by anyone. They were rendered by a 3D graphics artist.
Now I'm driving a race car. This is the heckin' best. Look, everything's made of cardboard. This is just so cute. Oh, I love this game.
Applying a kind of auteur theory to look at this seems obvious when the auteur is so obvious. But it isn't really useful to try and think about why every single piece of recycled trash was put in its place. It's enough to know that all of them were put there with intention to create a fun experience.
Be afraid of the dark? Okay, okay, I mean, I guess this is kind of a spooky level. It's not too bad. Oh, hey, an information block. What does this say? If he sees you... Oh no! Oh no! Oh no! No, no! Ah! No! Ah! Oh my god! Oh, okay. Oh no, he's there too! Oh my god!
Yoshi! Alright then. Let's just do it. Let's just go talk about Nier. It's hard to gauge how long games are because of how different people play through different games at different speeds. But...
Oh boy! Mamma mia!
Great Caesar's ghost!
Holy moly! Bring me that canoe!
Nier Automata is a long game.
It is, after all, Yoko Taro's big work! YouTuber Adam Johnston of the channel Your Movie Sucks has been reviewing the film Synecdoche, New York for literally years now. He releases long videos picking over the themes of the film and the ways in which the film executes those themes down to the tiniest details. He's commented on several occasions, even in the reviews, that he feels like he's being swallowed up by this film, like he's trapped reviewing it. The problem, I think, is not just that the film is big and dense, but it's about a man making a play about his own life that ends up including himself making the play, and so on ad infinitum. This kind of piece of media is a spiral, a loop, and it invites you to chase your tail endlessly, especially if the way that you approach it is to pick apart the metaphor just wherever you can find it. I think I can see the same fear here. Nier Automata makes you play it over and over and over again just to get the basic story. All that to say, if you don't know what you want to say, if you don't go into an analysis of this kind of thing, knowing what you want to get out of it, you can get lost. So with that in mind, what's going on in Nier Automata? Section 2. Frameworks. I think the first thing we need is to find the right framework to actually look at this thing with. Understanding media through auteur theory means assuming everything was done by one auteur with a particularly deliberate authorial intent. But Yoko Taro doesn't really like people guessing his intent. He says he wants games to stand on their own and that he thinks it's more appealing for players to look at the strange character than an old man. Which is why the bobblehead. Yoko Taro doesn't want you to think about him, he wants to make you feel things. In a talk on game design, he explained two different techniques he uses: backwards script writing and photo thinking. By backwards script writing, he means that he starts at the point where a player playing one of his games feels something and works backwards. Why are they sad? Well, a girl died. Why is that sad? Because the character was young and innocent and she was happy, and it was her wedding day and everyone loved her. It's a mistake to get weighed down in the garbage details, the unimportant aspects. But it's really hard not to. If you do though, you can't not sound like... This game is really AATO, all about the circles. The Yoha base that you return to, that's one big ring. You use the circle button to interact with everything. The aliens, when they show the aliens coming down, the aliens are coming down to Earth, and the moon and the moon's orbit around the Earth, they're all circles, and then the aliens come in and they're these two overlapping squares, perfectly unnatural to our ideal, idyllic circle existence. But then the aliens send down the machines, and the machines are circles with circles for eyes. The circles are the us, and they are the them, but the them is becoming more like us, just as it always has done, and on, because the circle also represents the cycle, and the repetitions, and the inevitability of it all. And that's exactly my point. It's very neat, it's very pleasing to see how it all fits together, but what does it really add to our analysis? When you have the right framework to look at it, Nier Automata isn't actually that complicated. What? Don't talk to me, it breaks the fourth wall.
What?
It's not actually that complicated, it's just long and full of ephemera used to make its central point, and structured in a way you might not quite be expecting. So, what is that structure? Well, if you're a real Star Wars fan like me, you will have read this 10-page essay on the hidden artistry of the prequels and ring structure at least 3 times. And if you haven't read it at least 3 times, I guess you're just not a real Star Wars fan. Ring structure, or chiastic structure, is used to represent the cyclical nature of life, the way that things often repeat and evolve through repetition, and also narratively is used to make the audience compare and contrast parts of the story that are clearly marked as similar. Chiastic structure is used in religious texts and epic poems, so considering that this game is a big work, that seems pretty appropriate. The game opens with the words,
We are perpetually trapped in a never-ending spiral of life and death.
And there's quite a long intro before you first are able to save the game.
Which means that unless you play the game on the easiest difficulty, or you're just really good at games, one of which is me, you're definitely gonna die and start again over and over. And over again here.
We are perpetually trapped in a never-ending spiral of life and death.
Which, in terms of ways to switch on your audience to the fact that this game has themes, is pretty good.
In ring structure, there are typically two parts where not only a character will go on an arc, but symbolically they'll travel a second arc, arriving, in some sense, at the place they started. In ring structure, you also often have loops within loops, chiasms within chiasms, like how the parts of the Star Wars trilogy reflect each other, or how we're only in the first act of this video, and I already made 2 parts with reflecting crossover scenes.
Yeah, I bet you felt really smug for noticing, but now, everyone's just gonna think you got it after I told you, just like everybody else. Yeah, I saw Curio was doing a thing. I was already familiar with chiastic structure. No, you weren't. Shut the fuck up.
Why don't you go make your own video if you think you're so fucking smart?
But what does the ring structure tell us? Well, put simply,
We are perpetually trapped in a never-ending spiral of life and death.
but that's not enough to really understand this game. So I'm going to cut straight to the point, and I'm going to tell you the core idea of Nier Automata. And then we're going to do a little bit of backwards script writing. Because to properly understand this game, to properly analyze it, I think you need to understand the message and then understand how we got there.
In Michael Saba's excellent essay on the humanist philosophy of Nier Automata, you will see how Yoko Taro was apparently inspired by a Coke ad campaign on the border of India and Pakistan. In the ad campaign, participants had to work together to play a game, except one participant was in each country. Similarly, at the end of Nier Automata, once you have played the game through on every route and seen everyone's perspectives, as the final credits roll, you have to go through a crushingly difficult bullet hell shooter, except the bullet hell shooter is the end credits. You have to fight and destroy the names of the people who made the game. As you die over and over, the game asks you if it's worthwhile to even keep going, sending you questions like, do you admit there is no meaning in the world? But at the same time, you will be presented by encouraging messages from players all around the globe. After many deaths, you will be offered reinforcements, and if you accept, additional little shooters will appear around you, protecting you and helping you defeat the end credits. When you finally do, you get one more choice. This time, the game wants to know, will you delete all your save data, and in exchange, send your shooter to go help someone else defeat the end credits and finish the game? In his design talk, Yoko Taro said, he thinks, when designing a game, about the entire realm of possible things you can do in a game.
Thinking about this ourselves, we can see that perhaps nothing serves more perfectly as a selfless gesture than deleting your save data. Your progress through the game is all you have in the game. So deleting your save data, erasing your progress, is ultimately giving up yourself to save someone else. Here, we can start to understand the central philosophy of Nier Automata. You can find meaning in a meaningless universe, but it has to be better than us versus them.
Section 3. Combining, examining, and evolving ideas.
On its own, sorting between what's being referenced by the game because it's intellectually relevant and what's being referenced just because it's part of the experience is still a pretty daunting task. Like, I spent a full day-long diversion looking into the links between chiastic structure and Joseph Campbell's monomyth. And like, did you know that Joseph Campbell was widely accused of being an anti-Semite and called by some a romantic fascist? Because I did know that. I spent a really long time trying to work into my script that Campbell was in many ways the Jordan Peterson of his day, and his ideas and philosophy about prominent archetypes echoing through history opened the door to some really sketchy, semi-fascistic shit. But there's no way to put that in a video about the anime waifu game, so...
The show Kantaro, the sweet-toothed salaryman, is a peculiar story in which an office worker with a passion for pudding works double hard making sales so he has extra time to visit Tokyo's best vendors of sweets and write about their best dishes on his popular but secret food blog. Generally speaking, trying the desserts sends Kantaro to sweet heaven, where he has a weird imaginary sequence where he, turns into a grape or something. It's a fantastically weird show, and it often feels like it's transparently just a vehicle for food reviews of good spots to get sweets in Tokyo. But something really bizarre in every episode is that Kantaro will relate back his writings about pudding to quotes from historical figures, including Nietzsche, Winston Churchill, and Leonardo da Vinci. The use of these references in Sweet Tooth Salaryman are incredibly superficial. They come out of nowhere, they're so bizarre, and they're so bizarre because they seem to be forced in only to give Sweet Tooth Salaryman an air of legitimacy it doesn't need. At the other extreme, in the show The Good Place, another show which commonly references historical thinkers, about once an episode even, the ideas presented are integrated into the plot and propel characters forward.
The Good Place ends up dropping an absolutely fantastic moral critique of modern society, and it does that by taking us on a philosophical journey.
It starts in season 1 with the setup that Eleanor is incorrectly placed in the good place, which means she needs to learn how to functionally imitate good people, along the way teaching us, the audience, what good people act like. Then, with the revelation that they are all in the bad place, the show becomes about escaping their system and starts to criticize how arbitrary and unjust their moral judgments are. In the third season, with the twist that nobody is getting into the good place anymore, the show demonstrates that modern life is too complex, and that nobody is able to make any net positive moral decisions anymore because there is no ethical consumption under capitalism. Nier Automata similarly shifts reality by revealing more information that we weren't privy to before. At the end of the first playthrough, for example, we learn that androids and machines have the same cause driving them, which begs the question, what's really the difference between them? The characters named after philosophers introduced in Nier Automata aren't parts of its philosophical journey per se, or they aren't necessarily.
Whether and in what ways a creator of a work is familiar with particular other works has been an important discussion in academic philosophy for a long time. In a chapter on Hegel and de Beauvoir in A Companion to Simone de Beauvoir, Kimberly Hutchings sums up a long academic back and forth of whether Simone de Beauvoir actually read Hegel, or rather whether she has her own interpretation of it that's separate and unique from that of her partner, Jean-Paul Sartre. This is something that thought mind people would like to call intertextuality. It's the discussion of ideas between different texts. Famous and well-respected philosopher Simone de Beauvoir absolutely read Hegel, but this is the discussion of how and in what ways her work discusses ideas present in Hegel's works. So we could say, in one sense, that Simone de Beauvoir, as in the person, read Hegel, and that's absolutely true. But we could say in a different sense entirely that Simone de Beauvoir, as in her works, read Hegel, as in his works. This might handily get us around the problem of asking the question, what ideas are present in Nier Automata, while the creator wants us to completely ignore him? We can instead ask, has Nier Automata read, for example, Simone de Beauvoir?
Section 4. Why everyone hates moral philosophy professors.
So let's look at Nier Automata's philosophers. All the good ones get to be there. Marx and Engels, Sartre, not Ayn Rand, Lao Tzu and Confucius and Simone de Beauvoir and not Ayn Rand, Kant, Kierkegaard, not Ayn Rand. You know, just all the good ones.
There are some ideas we could probably ascribe to other philosophers too, and in some cases philosophers I've actually read, like Jeremy Bentham, which would be cool, but if we did that we'd definitely run out of time. I don't know, we don't have to talk about Bentham. I went to UCL, so I probably think about Jeremy Bentham much more than normal people do. What with having seen his corpse so much, thanks Jez! So I guess I need to understand some basic philosophy. If only I had a handy way of understanding basic philosophy. Okay, yeah, so I had to learn a lot of philosophy from watching PhilosophyTube, and by using Wikipedia as a guide and reading academic summaries. I don't want to clarify which philosophers I read directly, since I don't think it's really necessary. However, I also don't want to represent myself as having read much more than I actually have, because I think there's sometimes an unhealthy pressure on people to have read everything, or else be forced out of conversations.
Remember kids, reading books is good for you. But if you look down on people for not having read the same books as you, people sigh with relief when you leave the room.
So who has Nier Automata read? Has Nier Automata read Hegel? No, nobody's read Hegel, he's boring as hell, the end. Okay, in all seriousness, there's a boss called Hegel in Nier Automata, and it's a big bug machine that separates into bits but also reforms to make a whole. It's neat that Hegel is a bunch of parts making up a whole, since his most basic lesson was we live in a society, and since of course Hegel himself was a horrifying centipede man. But the game actually engages with ideas of recognition, the self and the other, and dialectics, all ideas that Hegel is famous for. In his book, Phenomenology of Ghosts, Hegel laid out a theory known as the master-slave dialectic, wherein an archetypal master is able to establish their identity in their recognition as the master by a slave. This slave is a fundamental other. Their existence establishes the identity of the master because the master needs someone to oppress, whereas the identity of the slave is essentially self-evident, because according to Hegel, life is affirmed by confronting death, which the slave does constantly. Therefore, the master needs the slave, but the slave does not need the master. If I'm honest, I don't really personally rate Hegel. I think that his belief that the whole universe is defined by opposites is for dweebs, and I find his theories on history and how we swing between extremes before settling on the correct answer in the middle oddly naive. However, the concept of the dialectic totally owns, and it does form the basis of a lot of progressive theory. In his video on Hegel, PhilosophyTube explored how Hegel influenced thinkers like Frantz Fanon, for example. Honestly, referencing someone like Fanon, who wrote Black Skin, White Masks, which I extremely do rate, and who talked about race and racism generally, might have been a much more apt pick for Nier Automata.
If we're going to relate back to this idea that we must find purpose in life, but purpose in divisions is pointless, then integrating even a nod towards anti-racist theory would have been nice.
Right after the first fake title card of the game, when you're placed on Earth to roam free for the first time, you'll have to complete collecting side quests for 2 NPCs. One is an android with a faulty leg who needs parts to fix it, and if you get them for him, he will become your home base merchant. The other is the weaponsmith, who also wants parts to fix something before he'll start trading with you. When you bring the parts to the merchant, however, he doesn't want you to fix his leg. His leg is the last part of his android body he hasn't replaced, and he ponders, if I replace this last part, am I still ultimately me? This is a pre-existing conundrum known as the Ship of Theseus. If you took a huge ship and replaced it plank by plank, at what point would it stop being itself? When you bring the parts back to the weapons trader, at first he tells you how much he likes his job, because making weapons means he's keeping his friends safe. Then, however, he pauses. Although sometimes I wonder, what if my weapons are just making my friends die all the faster?
These two ideas are placed early in the game to essentially put them in the back of your mind, to put a pin in them. You're being asked to essentially hold on to the thoughts, what is really the difference between one thing and another? And war is bad.
The first appearance of Adam and Eve demonstrates right away that there doesn't have to be any visual distinction between the machines and the androids. And the revelation that the androids use machine cores basically says, well, they're the same on the outside, and they're the same on the inside, so through the first playthrough, you'll have answered this question, what is the difference between one thing and another, with maybe nothing at all. The divisions between us are utterly constructed, even if they have very real effects. Bringing back in Hegel, though, we need to understand that sometimes constructed divisions doesn't mean Group A and Group B doesn't like each other. Sometimes one is the master and one is the slave. Sometimes the constructed identities of each group are only constructed by one, the one with all the power. Author James Baldwin once said,
"What white people have to do is try and find out in their own hearts why it is necessary to have an N-word in the first place, because I am not an N-word. I'm a man. But if you think I'm an N-word, it means you need it."
In the cases of systemic oppression, both group identities can be constructed, but they are usually constructed not by the oppressed group, but by the oppressor alone. And not even the whole in-group, but by the ruling class of that in-group. Nier Automata explores this textually too, in showing that ultimately the androids have the capability to utterly annihilate the machines and win the war, but Yorha does everything they can to keep the war going. This is purely Hegelian, in the sense that the master, in the master-slave dialectic, decides they cannot kill the slave or they will have no one to recognize them as the master. so they keep them in perpetual suffering.
As I explored in my essay on Spider-Man, some groups derive validation from constructed identities, and other groups that are told they are invalid by society, struggle for a sense of validity. Nier Automata would have us all abandon the validation of constructed identities. But why?
After all, the game also references Jean-Paul Sartre, famous existentialist, and Soren Kierkegaard, who acknowledged the absurdity and randomness of the universe and said that the solution was to throw oneself into faith. The game is critical of Kierkegaard's faith answer, but it seems to clearly be preoccupied with the questions of existence and of purpose. After all, the main character is literally named to be. So, if we are searching for meaning in a meaningless universe, why shouldn't it be found in the validation of an in-group? Enter Pascal, the pacifist machine in the machine village who wants only to protect the children. Pascal is of course named after Blaise Pascal, who famously created Pascal's wager. Essentially, we have everything to gain from believing in God, and everything to lose from not. Pascal, the robot, not the French guy, takes the children to hide in an abandoned factory after the village is burned down, when infected machines start attacking everything, tearing down the whole village, the whole machine society. A2 protects the factory, but after defeating the infected machines, she and Pascal discover that the children, fearful of their end, have killed themselves. Pascal begs you, currently playing as A2, to either wipe his memory or kill him.
We see through Pascal a tragedy. If only the world could be more like Pascal, the robot, not the French guy, his children wouldn't have anything to be afraid of. If only the whole world could be as he is, pacifistic, uninterested in fighting.
And then there's Hegel again. If we're trapped in this state of perpetual hatred towards the other, then we're like the master in the master-slave dialectic, only defined by the recognition from outside. But in the dialectic, ultimately the slave turns away from the master and focuses on their own labors, on the deeds and the fruits of their actions as the definitions of who they are.
The game also references philosophers Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels. Alright, I know you know these guys, calm down.
Marx and Engels, of course, most famous for writing the Communist Manifesto and Das Kapital, had a focus on a sort of dialectic themselves. In fact, arguably the core ideas of Marxism are just the Hegelian dialectic taken out of this strange abstract space where two people are staring at each other and just thinking about existence, and into the real world. In A Thief in Broad Daylight, Slovenian philosopher Slavoj Žižek writes,
"One of the reliable signs of political opportunism is what, in parallel with particle physics, one may call political correlationism. This happens when particles are split and their spins remain correlated. If I measure the spin of one particle, I automatically know that of the other. Something similar often happens, and happened, in politics. I'm not sure which position I should take in a particular political struggle, but when I learn the position of my enemy, I automatically assume the opposite one."
In the 1950s, the American government propagandized against communists by suggesting that they were gay in order to unite the anti-communists and homophobes into hating one common enemy, the gay communist, although they were a little early, because I wouldn't be born until 1996. Today, this holds true as well, with people like Steven Crowder seemingly obsessed with a black, gay, leftist boogeyman coming to kill him or take his job through affirmative action or pay for healthcare, I guess? Something. This is of course an issue with the left as well, though. Badmouse recently released a video exploring the perspectives of Southwest Asian and North African Christians living in countries where Muslim-controlled governments are persecuting and oppressing them. Due to the left's stance against the American far right, which is typically fundamentalist Christian, and sympathy for immigrants, especially Muslim immigrants who are particularly demonized, leftists often position themselves as the defenders of Muslims against Christian oppression. Therefore, for these Swana Christians living under oppression by Muslims, the most obvious ally in the West would appear to be the conservatives, championing Judeo-Christian values. The cycle, both the literal cycles of war in the game and the ring structure of the narrative, come to represent the unbreaking cycle of how we continue to form in-groups and out-groups. So Nier Automata ends up being a game all about repetition that is begging for the cycles to end. It wants us to understand that in a meaningless universe, finding meaning is good, but that any divisions between us might be the most meaningless thing of all.
It wants us to stop making those in-groups and out-groups and investing in that validation we get from constructed identities. In the words of the machines who were about to create a machine that looked perfectly human, this cannot continue. The machines aren't interested in fighting, in invasion, in taking over the world. They're trying to imitate humans because ultimately they want to communicate to the androids that they mean no harm, that they want to make peace, that we're really all just the same. Maybe we always will make those groups and draw that validation, but we need to have more than that. A lot more than that. Yeah, so yeah, that's basically what's going on in Nier Automata. Oh, we forgot to talk about one of the philosophers referenced in the game. Okay, wait, don't go anywhere. Has Nier Automata read Simone de Beauvoir?
I'd like to thank Shackleford Stanwick, Quinn Commandant, Declan Smartwood, IV Stucker, Holden Rosengrupp, Dar Sleeper, Sky Dupree, Taggart Emer, Dallas Creamer, and Colby Hamway. Those aren't my patrons, those are just some top tier lacrosse players I found, and they thought they have such great names, I should give them a shout out. Anyway, I'd also like to thank Han the Man and Baphometrics, who both make incredible music for Curio, as well as you, the viewer, for making it all the way to the end of the video. I'm doing a thing where I shout out channels I think are worth a follow now, and this time I'd like you to go to subscribe to Laura Crone and Alice Pope Terry. Laura was actually the hologram in my Horizon Zero Dawn essay, and she has a fantastic video about Magic Mike I think I've seen about 5 times now. Alice is a friend of mine, and she's been making really good series called Trans 101 to educate people on the basics regarding trans people. If you'd like to support Curio, you can become a patron or donate to me directly via PayPal. Patrons get access to often much longer text versions of my essays, as well as early access to videos, and now entry into my Discord server. So if any of that interests you, or you'd just like to make me happy because my birthday's around the corner, please consider becoming a patron. Okay. See you all in part 2, Nier Automata, and gender. This is great. I should do all my videos from bed from now on. This is just great.